Have you ever played Burial Cart, Steven?
Oh yeah, all the time.
All right, okay. So you are a fan of Burial Cart. So GameCube, Wii, or Switch? What Nintendo 64? What's
Yeah,
your way to go? Nintendo 64.
Nintendo 64. Yeah.
Okay, that's me and my college buddies. We started with the N64, GameCube on occasion. Anyways, finishing that beer there before we started. I can't lie. It was a hard seltzer.
Yeah.
It was a White Claw knockoff. Just finishing that reminded me of the good old days. Anyway, Steven, this is the MGoFish podcast. I'm David Arnold, as always. He's Stephen Osentoski, as always. We needed a few days to console ourselves after Wisconsin.
Yeah, I should have been playing Burial Cart during that time. That would have been a better use of that.
It would have been
time.
a way better use of time. Yeah, I turned off the TV really early and watched the replay after I knew it already happened because, to be frank, I'd seen that pattern before and I had enough newborn shit to deal with.
Both literally and figuratively.
Yeah, didn't need year 5 shit.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You'd expect them to be potty trained by that time.
Yeah. Year 5, baby. You better be up, walking, wiping your own ass.
Yeah.
Well, we got off to a vulgar start there, Steve. I might have to edit that out. Anyways, Michigan just played Rutgers, a program who in year 4 still in diapers. And actually, they're going to start all over with a newborn next year themselves. Yeah. Firing Chris Ash after Michigan demolishes Rutgers, holds them to 0 points for the second time, and during that 78-0 game, was it 78-0 or 78-7?
It was 78-0.
Yep,
that was
okay.
7-8-0.
Yep. So second shutout in 4 years for the Michigan Wolverines over Rutgers. Was that cathartic enough for you, Stephen?
It was what had to happen. It was a 0-win situation for Michigan. 0 win. But they didn't come up with the loss. Both they did everything they could have done to not make people freak out. I'll say that. If the worst you can say is but Rutgers, then that's what you've accomplished, right? It's not like this looked bad, this looked bad, this looked bad. It was like everything looked fine, but it was Rutgers, and that's exactly what you need it to be after that loss.
I think MGoFish already combined those two into its own word with Butgers, right? I think a couple years ago that they invented that.
Yep. Well, I didn't know if that was because of the phrase "but it's Rutgers" or just that Rutgers is but. I don't know which one. It's definitely both.
Both
it should apply.
Yeah.
It should. Yeah, and I'm kind of offended that they only fired their head coach Chris Ash after this loss, where they lost to Boston College last week 30-16. And it's hilarious because they were 30-16 is an acceptable loss to Boston College, but then losing 52-0 to Michigan, that's unacceptable. It's kind of
I think it might have been, all right, Chris, you we're going to lose to Michigan anyways, but
make it look
if you can rally the troops, make this year Alamo, make it competitive, maybe we can talk. Yeah, because I bet you that's what it was. It's like, hey man, we're going to fire you anyways, but if you can rally the troops here, that is your one saving grace, and it was not their one saving grace.
No.
Michigan ends up routing Rutgers 52-0. I have some takeaways. I don't know if they're hot takes.
Okay.
But I'm curious to hear your overall opinion. First off, though, we took the week off last week due to some circumstances beyond our control. This week, we're going to do one podcast, and then you're not going to be with me when I do the the Iowa preview on Thursday, Friday. You're going to be in Europe, Stephen?
Yeah, I'm going on a 10-week 10-day. It would be 10 week.
Holy cow.
I would be a happy person.
Richard Branson over here with the cash.
10-day vacation, going to Prague and then Budapest and then Vienna. and then a wedding in Moldova, which is, if you don't know where that is, that's right next to Romania in Eastern Europe. And fun fact about
Whoa.
this wedding,
Yeah.
125 people is the guest list, 180 bottles of vodka. So
That is the
everyone
most
gets a
Eastern
bottle.
European
I was about to say that is,
thing ever.
yes.
That's
Yeah.
my kind of party there, Stephen.
So it'll be a fun time. Yeah, lots of things scheduled. We'll see. I'm taking an overnight train from Prague to Budapest on Saturday evening. So there may be a chance, if that has Wi-Fi, to tune in towards the end of that game. But obviously analysis won't be doable. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm prioritizing some of the sites and experience in Europe.
Now, this wedding, is it family members from Europe you've never met before? Is it family members?
It's an American member who worked in London, met the fiance, I guess current fiance, to be wife, while working in London, and he actually is going to Ann Arbor. He's going to Michigan for his MBA. He went to Michigan for undergrad as well. He's a cousin, and he's marrying his to-be wife in Moldova, where she's originally from. So that's kind of why the trip is happening out there. It'll be a good time.
Cultural. That is awesome. That's often, Stephen, I told you not to tell me what cities you're going to.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to hear, and that just blew me out of the water, man. I was thinking, maybe I might go to Paris, maybe Milan, Italy. That is really cool. That is some cool stuff there, Stephen. I've only been to Europe once myself.
Oh, where'd you go?
London and then France.
There you go.
True story. Our podcast, we only have a couple hundred listeners at this moment right here. When me and Garrett first did the first round of the podcast,
Yeah.
We did it for 2.5 years. Me and my wife now, we are newlyweds, and it was New Year's time. We were in London for 3 nights, and then we went to Paris for the day. We rode a train down to Paris, spent the whole day there. On the train ride to Paris, I get a DM in my Twitter account because I was like, going to Paris for the day.
Right.
A listener from the MGoFish podcast said, "Hey, I'm in Paris right now. My grandmother lives here. I visit here 3 times a year. Let me show you around Paris."
Wow.
This is a true story. This is Harrison. No way Harrison ever listens to the podcast anymore. But I'm gonna Facebook him tonight and be like, "Yo, I just talked about you for the first time in forever." Harrison Rosh Hashanah. He's going to be mad at me for not knowing his last name. Anyways, he was a college student in Canada, obsessed with American football at some point.
Yeah.
Randomly started following me on Twitter and listening to the show. Long story short, showed me and my wife and my sister around the entire town of Paris. Took us from spot to spot to spot for the entire day. Spoke French to everyone we needed to speak French to. We hit up Notre Dame way before it burned down.
Right.
Went to downtown France. We saw the Eiffel Tower, and he was our tour guide the entire time. It was the coolest experience of my life. Like, honestly, the coolest experience of my life. I mean, what are the odds?
Yeah, right? That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
So we need to find a Prague, Budapest, Vienna, and Moldova listener.
If you know how to speak, Czech.
All of those languages.
Hit up Stephen Osentoski.
Yeah, there you go.
That's right.
At Stephen Toski, right? There you go.
It was literally the coolest
That's wild.
thing.
That's awesome.
After like 2 years of my wife just rolling her eyes every time I was like, I need to do a podcast. That one moment built me all the capital I needed for the rest of my life. Like literally the rest of my life. We got pictures, the whole thing. It was awesome.
That's amazing.
Harrison, you are a living legend. Living legend.
Yeah, that guy, that's a good guy right there. I would send him beer at like each spot.
Yeah.
Also, here's a fun fact about Prague, and I want you to guess here. How much do you think it's 500 milliliters, so about a 16-ounce beer. How much do you think that beer costs in Prague?
No. In my mind at first I was like, Europe, everything's more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But then you went alcohol on me. There's no way alcohol is more expensive for how many milliliters?
So 500. So about 16 fluid ounces.
35 cents.
Okay, now you're crazy.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm just undercutting.
It's gonna be $1.50.
That is awesome, man.
Which is insane. Because in Chicago, like a nice beer, draft beer, you're looking at $8 or so, $7, $8.
Still stands. You were expecting me to go high. I'm sorry.
No.
I don't go to the bars.
I was expecting low. If it was 35 cents, I probably wouldn't come back. I'd probably be like, 0 to beer belly in 2 weeks right there. But no, it'll be a good time. Looking forward to it.
Join the dad bod crew right there.
Yeah, right. 0 to 100.
Anyway, Stephen, I had to ask you about Europe because we'd talked about it beforehand. I was very curious. Curious. The only thing I'm more curious about right now, Josh Gaddis, this whole sideline thing. I'm so prepared to diverge paths one way or the other, and I'm like 2 weeks away, maybe even 1 week away, if Iowa goes really well, from being all aboard all Gaz need to do is get on the sideline and we're off and running here.
Yeah.
I'm equally prepared of one more week of the first 3 weeks of the season to be like, well, okay, that was the dumbest storyline I ever heard in my life. Right up there with, Michigan's defense is going to be fine on the defensive tackle position, even though we have Ben Mason there.
Right.
What'd you think of the offense? Well, your thoughts, 52-0. It looks good. It sounds good. On film, though.
Yeah.
What changed to make it different other than we went from playing a top 15 team to Wisconsin's top 10 team? There's no doubt about it. Top 10 team to playing an FCS opponent, Rutgers. I mean, genuinely, it looked like, we'll get into this in a minute. I thought it looked like the JV team playing the freshman team in high school.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Tell me, what are your thoughts and opinions?
It is egregious how bad Rutgers is, but I think, and obviously, as always, I'm not going to keep saying it's Rutgers, but always keep that in the back of your mind with anything I say here.
You should really always think it's Rutgers.
However, I think there's a lot of things offensively that are independent of whatever defense you're playing against. And it's pretty clear that Michigan's been getting in their own way the first 3 games. Of course, a poor opponent will allow you to be better, but Michigan didn't fumble on their first possession of the game. That's one thing that is generally opponent independent. They didn't. I don't think they had a fumble all game. I think a late punt return was the only fumble. I think it was Mike St. Ristel fumbled that punt return. So overall, there was one turnover on the interception that was an attempted fade to Nico Collins. That'll happen. We're wanting to see those guys involved more on those one-on-one matchups. So that's kind of like you're trying it, go for it. Like, you got to do that. So I think the things that stood out, I do like the switch of Gaddis to the sideline. I think it was a game where you can really try that without much downside, right? If it doesn't work, then even go up at halftime, but just see how it fits. He's never been a coordinator before, or at least never big time coordinator. He's had a piece in the play calling, but he's only now started calling plays. There's a big difference, I think, from, he seems like a film guy who really likes to break down plays and see the whole picture of an offense. It's obviously harder to do that on the sideline, but, there's got to be intricacies of interacting with the players, getting their feedback, getting things that they're seeing from their point of view that can be really valuable as well. So I think it's good just to get him that experience. Obviously, it seems like it paid off this time. So it'll be interesting just to see that sort of contrast and what happens moving forward. But I think that was just a good thing to try in terms of his growth as an offensive coordinator. And then
it drives me crazy thinking about it now. I mean, hindsight, whatever. Thinking about now that Gaddis, the highest, the quickest shooting star in the world of college football, the hottest shooting star, being in the booth for the first 3 games. This is a guy who is on track to be a head coach in 2 years. I mean, I think if you would have had a Tom Herman run, and which is still potentially possible, he could be on track for a high-profile job within the next 12 to 24 months. If not that, within the next 36 months, it's almost a guarantee he'll have a head coaching job somewhere. It just depends on how successful they're going to be at Michigan, whether it's a P5 job or a G5 job.
Right.
I don't think there's any disagreement, though, that the next step for him is a head coaching job. That he would not want to be on the sidelines to start the season with Jim Harbaugh. That just drives me crazy in one sense. Second off, I'm all for the hype. The one thing I do agree with him, I would tell you what, man, this is like getting your heart broken by a new girl and having her immediately want you to trust her again. Him being on the sidelines is like, okay, this is a nice gimmick. This is a nice fallback option for you. If you're successful the rest of your cool, this works. I'll give you a couple more weeks before I complain. Still don't totally trust him, though. He did say the offense needed leadership.
Yeah.
That was part of the reason why he's moved to the field. I agree with that, and I think that's a really troubling sign for this team. Just with the senior leadership from Shea that should be there, et cetera, upperclassmen such as DPJ. I do wonder if there's just a leadership void, and if Gaddis can fill it, that's fine. Those are just things I think about. When we play teams like Iowa next week or Wisconsin last week. Anyways, continue. I went on a little rant there. What was your next point there, Stephen?
Yeah, no, just go back on that. I think Gaddis just stands out to me as like a film guy. And totally. if I were a coordinator, my first thing would be I want to see everything that's happening at once, like in one frame. It would drive me crazy, and I'm even that way as a spectator. Right. If I'm low and I can't see, I just want to be able to see everything.
I totally agree. In baseball, I prefer the nosebleeds as opposed to front row, first or third baseline.
Right.
The same exact reason. Reason.
But yeah, I don't necessarily see it as like a downside in terms of like the emotional aspect. There's leaders, and then there's like emotional leaders. It's possible that DPJ, Patterson, I think Bredesen comes off as a pretty stoic guy as well. I don't know the personalities. I don't know how they interact. But if they're more, leaders by example, if you have a coach that, think of Don Brown, just someone who's like screaming in your face and can add a little bit of life, just add a little bit more in terms of emotion into that. I don't think it's necessarily cause for concern, but it could add a little bit more, I don't know exactly, like hype is a bad word for it, but just a little more oomph into like the offensive life. I don't know, kind of wake them back up or something. So I think there's, it's a good game to try that out. And I liked like the emotion he was showing. He was talking to a lot of people. It didn't seem like he was lost, on the sideline. So I think that's a good sign. He was interacting with a lot of different players, a lot of different personnel. So that's always a good sign.
It did make me happy to see his passion. See, the fiery passion was something we needed. Especially, with the way the fumbles happened, the first possession of every drive for Michigan, the first 3 games of the season, instantly the energy was sucked out of the offense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and possibly not even to their fault, because you get some bad luck, you turn the ball over, it just sucks. You dry, right?
Yep.
Seeing Gaddis bring the passion was something I desperately needed to see. That was a staple. When things really turned wrong for Hoke, the first time I really noticed, oh no, Brady Hoke is in trouble. This team is in trouble. This culture is in trouble. I felt like all of the hubris and confidence from his teams was fake confidence.
Yeah.
Was false confidence. Was them saying, we're supposed to be Michigan, so we're going to try to act like Michigan. And it felt very forced.
Right.
And that was something I've been worried, and I still am worried about this year's team. I don't want the confidence to feel forced.
Right.
So having Gaddis come down there and very much do his best Jim Harbaugh impression was very comforting to see, because we need the true passion from those guys. That's something I wanted to see from this game at the very least. And we saw it, so that's where I am.
Yeah, and you think that now that Harbaugh's a bit, more hands-off on the offense, he's not really where I think years past he was kind of the leader. He has his hand in calling a lot of the plays. He had his hand in designing the offense. So he was kind of more of that leader on the sideline. I'm just thinking of like during the Wisconsin game, you're down 21-0, and then the main guy who built your offense and who is the main guy calling the plays, he's 1,000 feet up in a booth, and you're going through hell. You're really struggling, and the main guy who's calling it isn't down there struggling with you. I don't know. I think there's got to be something there. I could totally be wrong.
So that could be a learning curve for Harbaugh too. You're right.
Yeah.
That's a very astute point there, Stephen, because it is hard, I would imagine, for Harbaugh to hand off the reins, because if he threw a really big traditional Harbaugh fit, which I think are positives, right? I think that's a positive in his coaching arsenal, is that he gets so emotional. But if he gets that emotional while he's not calling the plays in those first 3 games, they're going to zoom in on him and be like, oh, is Harbaugh taking over the play calling right now?
Right.
That's something I'm sure he was conscious of. So with Gaddis there, they can both freak out together. Maybe there is a little spark there. Who knows?
And then the other thing I saw from the offense, just like from overall their approach this game, is much more balanced. They had 41 rushing attempts to 27 passing attempts, I think. 27 passing attempts. If you're just looking at the stats, 3.4 yards per rush, that doesn't really stand out as like a successful game. But Rutgers really was kind of loading the box. They were bringing their safeties down quite a bit. That left a lot of one-on-one matchups on the outside with their receivers. So Patterson, had a pretty efficient day, 20 for 27. Thing I really liked what they did that we saw a lot of last year was a lot of QB waggle. They really leaned on the play action. They set up the run really nicely. Even if it's only 3.4 yards per rush, that contributed so much more to the 335 yards of passing in a way that against Wisconsin, we had none of that. It was not established at all.
Watching the replay, I guess I need to rewatch it again. I didn't see very many of the quote-unquote RPO type plays. Was that taken out of the system? And I can see it's perfectly fine if it was, perfectly fine if it wasn't. It wasn't something I was looking for, but it wasn't something I noticed either, where maybe the quarterback skill set for both Patterson and McCaffrey, even though McCaffrey did not play, but maybe for those two specifically, RPOs just aren't a successful move. Was it neutered? What were your thoughts when you saw that?
So I didn't see a whole lot of like read options where it was either the quarterback running or a handoff, right? I did see, I think, a couple RPOs, definitely not the same amount against Wisconsin, but it did seem like they just kind of adopted a lot of last year's scheme where most run plays were straight up run plays. They went back to the down G blocking scheme. They did a lot of things that we saw last year where they even went under center in single back formation.
Which was very nice to see.
Yeah, which is great to see.
And it does, the evolution of an offensive coordinator is adapting to the skill set of your team. And that is,
sure,
in college football, almost more than any other sport, and even level of system, you adapt to your talent more than the talent adapts to your system.
Absolutely.
You have to. You have no other choice. And that's something that I definitely felt like was a big thing for me seeing this game. It did feel a lot more like a Harbaugh-style offense. Not necessarily a bad thing either, because honestly, Harbaugh's offenses did just fine. How many points did Michigan score against Ohio State last year? The final score was 62-38, but they still scored 38 points. This is a team that has struggled against really good defenses, and maybe if you use the Harbaugh offensive system and mesh it a little bit more with the Gaddis system, the Joe Moorhead system, you don't completely choose one or the other. Maybe 75% Moorhead, 25% Harbaugh. I don't know the mix. Just say numbers are tangible. Well, they don't really mean anything. Intangible, abstract is the word I was looking for. But if you mesh those things together, maybe, and see what works, take what works from last year a little bit more, maybe this is something beyond just playing Rutgers.
Yeah,
something you can evolve from.
And you're totally right. It would have been way more successful if you lay the foundation for Gaddis's offense and implement Harbaugh's within it. You add the wrinkles, of what Gaddis brings with RPOs and more read options, more putting players on the defense in conflict. All of that is modernizing, I think, what Harbaugh's offense was missing. So I think it's and that's exactly what we saw. We saw a lot of plays that still were a couple RPOs and, had the option to run quick, right? It wasn't an offense where we're, burning the play clock down to 1 second each time. We were at times picking up the pace quite a bit. And I think that's what mainly Harbaugh's offense lacked. It was always a tough offense to run when you were behind because it predicated on the run. I think, we're shifting, like you said, to the personnel of Michigan where you have a mobile quarterback. We saw a lot more quarterback waggles this game where Patterson's rolling out and has, 3 levels of options to throw to. Utilize his legs. He's just as good on the run. You mitigate some of the offensive line issues we saw against Wisconsin.
That makes me more excited than anything else I saw. Continue your point. I have one thing I want to say after that.
Yeah.
But continue.
Yeah. So it felt like they have finally started understanding that, let's not light the Harbaugh offense on fire. There are lots of things great about it, as you said, and let's modernize it a bit, add some flavors to it. And it seems like they're realizing what they were good at last year, starting to incorporate a lot of those blocking schemes and how Harbaugh's offense catered to the skill set of Patterson. And they still need to kind of ramp up on the Gaddis aspect of it instead of just going all in on that, because I feel like they kind of lost themselves.
They lost their complete identity. Just completely lost it.
And this felt like a very composed offense. Again, you're comfortable, not a good opponent, but they still ran the offense well. There were very few times where I felt like, I don't remember a time where they had to burn a timeout, where they looked out of sync. There were very rarely any blown plays. It looked a lot smoother overall, and I think that is opponent independent.
I have one qualm about the Rutgers game offensively. Mm-hmm. Nico Collins had that 48-yard touchdown to start the day. He had one catch the rest of the day for 11 yards. Against Rutgers, can we not get Nico Collins like 10 catches? Can we not plan to at least get him not just involved, but like make him the centerpiece? One thing that stresses me out a little bit and concerns me about this offense, you have a player like Nico Collins who's so obviously the best player, and yes, he might get double teamed, but also you have Donovan Peoples-Jones on the other side of him, and Drake Black, Ronnie Bell, et cetera, et cetera. You have enough options where they can't just zone in on Nico Collins the whole time. At least that would be my belief. I'm not mad. I'm not annoyed, but I think
you sound mad.
I know, because I'm a little troubled by it. Frankly,
sure.
I'm a little troubled that 52-0 we dominated Rutgers. Shea can't find the confidence to give it to Nico. And, he tried one time and threw an interception, I guess, later in the game, and maybe that was them trying to get Nico more involved. But I guess maybe I'm just feeling some angst from like a fantasy football perspective. I play NFL fantasy. I don't play college, but like when you play fantasy football in the NFL, you have a player like Julio Jones who is dominant and going to dominate every corner. And some games he'll get like 3 catches. And you're just like, no, there's no way. Like they're NFL minds. How can you not scheme to get your best player the ball more times than that? And I only say this out of concern because this has been the pattern the entire year for Nico Collins. For whatever reason, Michigan's just not getting him the ball. And we saw on the first drive what he can do if he gets the ball. I'm not worried. I'm not concerned, but I am frustrated by that. Against Rutgers, of all people, can we not get him 10 catches? It's ultimately a moot point. Like, it doesn't matter. But it is something I just kind of was frustrated by. And then I guess one other thing before we move on, I don't know how much more of the offense you want to talk, but I have one more thought on the offense. There's no quarterback competition between Joe Milton or Shea Patterson. Maybe there's one between Milton and McCaffrey when McCaffrey comes back. I'm okay with that line of thought. However, there's no zip on Shea Patterson's balls. The entire time I was watching that game, I mean, maybe I'm super biased going into thinking about it, but I've never noticed this before about Shea Patterson necessarily. There are times where he was throwing passes, and I was concerned when they left his hands that they were not going to get to the receiver in time. They look like they're floating. I mean, not floating, but like even the zip balls 8 to 15 yards out just don't have a lot of oomph on them.
Yeah.
Am I crazy in thinking? Should that be something I'm concerned about? I mean, when I just look at other top tier smaller quarterbacks like the Baker Mayfields of the world, the Kyler Murrays of the world, those other guys who are his size, the ball comes out quick off their hands, and I just feel like against better defenses, there's a chance that it just doesn't. Half those passes are not completed because the defense gets there in time.
Yeah, I think when you're comparing against Joe Milton,
and that's
who has
it too.
like a Stafford arm, like he has just a bullet.
Well, that's something else. The throw with Giles Jackson, it took me like 15 times watching it, which I did watch it 15 times because it was that beautiful. What I realized is that's the first time I've seen a Michigan quarterback throw the ball like that since Chad Henne to Mario Manningham, or on a cross pattern, on a post pattern, to beat Penn State in 2006.
Right.
That's like one of the last times I can remember a Michigan quarterback throwing the ball like that. I'm pretty sure Chad Henne was the last Michigan quarterback who could throw it like that.
Yeah. He was on the right hash of the 35-yard line and threw just like across the field
casually.
Into left corner. Yeah.
Casually.
He's got. I think the thing about Patterson, he is definitely, if you're looking at like his NCAA, EA Sports stats, he would definitely
the right way to contextualize it.
Exactly. He would definitely probably have like a 93, 94 accuracy and like an 80, 82 or something power. He's not a power guy. Where Milton's at a 98 power and like 80 accuracy maybe. Yeah. So it's definitely on the opposite side. I think the thing that really hurts Patterson that I don't know if emphasizes the issue or further complicates things is he waits until someone is blaringly wide open, like very open.
It's the Nico Collins problem, man.
He doesn't throw. He I don't know if it's like a sense thing, but he always waits an extra beat for that throw. So if you're throwing just a second or half second late and you don't have the Joe Milton power behind that throw, it's going to make it look like it's even, a less powerful throw because of that weight, because you're expecting that pass to come out while the receiver is coming open. Instead, he waits until he is open, and then not only is the pass not getting there on time, but it's also not a powerfully thrown ball. So I think that's a big aspect of it. But I think you're right where, a lot of times you're going to have to throw it at the appropriate time. And with that, that arm strength not being a major plus for him, that could come back to bite you. So, and it's mainly a reason that he struggled against Wisconsin and, against Ohio State last year. And that's a big thing. If you're waiting for people to come open instead of throwing to the open area a receiver will be. And if you're not comfortable doing that, then you're going to eat a lot of sacks. You're going to hold on to the ball longer than you should. And you're going to have some rough games against better competition. I think that's been his biggest holdout thus far. And then
unless that mental process gets quicker, which there's no reason to believe it will.
Right.
That's a ceiling capper for this Michigan football team.
Yep. And I get the frustration real quick about Collins not getting more catches. I think this was just the case where they had everything open to them, and Nico Collins is a guy they will utilize in one-on-one fade jump ball scenarios more. I just think they will, and there's no need to do that when you have a high percentage throw across the middle to Ronnie Bell. I mean, 6 catches, 83 yards. He was making everything work.
That's fair.
And I expect Collins to be a huge part of the game plan moving forward. And if not, you're absolutely correct. and I don't really have any reason to believe that.
Yeah, it's all speculation. I mean, it's
Yeah,
football. There's not
but
enough sample size ever.
at the end of the Wisconsin game, man, if they're not learning that exactly what you said, that just throw up to the guy, if they didn't learn that, then we're in bigger trouble than even I think we are right now. So, yeah.
And that's ultimately where we are. It is funny, before the season, our two expectation guys we thought were going to break out were Ronnie Bell and Giles Jackson.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I'm very excited about both of them. Like the next 2-3 years for both those guys should be very awesome. Giles Jackson is explosive, man. He is.
Yeah.
He is something. He's gonna be special. I bet he has ball control problems. I bet he fumbles in practice all the time. That's just the vibe I get with him.
I don't know, man. They put him in the backfield a couple times. I don't think they do that with how often they've been fumbling the ball.
He's so explosive. He's just so explosive. I just wonder, like, what's the reason they're not like quite trying to unlock him yet?
He's young, man. Why haven't you unlocked? And this is a good transition. Why haven't you unlocked Chris Hinton? Why haven't you unlocked Massey Smith?
That's a different conversation. With the wide receivers, you got 5-6 NFL guys. Defense.
That's true.
That's the one thing. Talking about ceiling cappers with Shea, moving to the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
Ceiling capper, that defensive line, at times against Rutgers, I thought wasn't pretty. If it wasn't a passing down, just watching the line up the middle was just getting beat. And I'm concerned that Iowa is just going to run down our throats for 40, 60 minutes, and we're not going to be able to stop them. And then if that happens against Iowa and Wisconsin, literally every other, Michigan State is going to do the same thing, even though their offensive line is terrible. Their offensive line might be a good 50-50 battle with our interior defensive line. Penn State, my God, I don't even want to think about. Penn State is going to take our biggest weakness, which is the defensive line, and they're just going to obliterate it. Notre Dame is going to do the same thing. Those are both two teams with Big Ten personalities. If you have Big Ten weaknesses, traditionally, Notre Dame's happy running it up your gut if you let them, albeit out of a spread offense, but they'll still do it nonetheless. Michigan State will try to do it, and Ohio State is just going to have the athletes and the size to do whatever they want. That's like 5 games out of the next 7, 8 that can do that. That's not good. Okay, what are your thoughts on the defense? Give me some hitters here.
Yeah, so I think the defensive line overall, definitely still the area of concern. I think you're not paying attention if that's not what you're thinking. But you look at the guys who had 6 or more carries for Rutgers between Blackshear, Adams, and Pacheco, and Blackshear and Pacheco are by far Rutgers' best athletes. Whoever the running back coach for Rutgers has to be like the saddest guy in the world, because he also, I think they were one of the first programs to offer Saquon Barkley. They offered Jonathan Taylor for like really early on. So they identify really, really good running backs. And Pacheco and I think Blackshear were 2 of those guys that obviously they were high on, and they're legit guys for Rutgers. So to keep them at 2.3 for Pacheco, 3 yards per carry for Adams, and 1.8 for Blackshear, that's pretty good. The offensive line is really bad for Rutgers, but those running backs have huge potential to create a lot of yards on their own. And the longest run was only 6 yards. So I think while there were a couple chunks, I'm not overly concerned about the run defense.
Whoa. It's Butgers. Mm-hmm. We're talking about Butgers right now. That I think the defensive line is the ultimate. You can't take anything away from this game.
Sure. But I'll say this: Wisconsin obviously had a record day.
The complete opposite side of the spectrum, right? You almost can't take anything away from them.
I don't think any other team on the schedule, maybe Ohio State, but even then, I think Michigan was just an awful matchup for Wisconsin, and Wisconsin was also one of the best teams in the Big Ten at this point. So I think you're definitely right that Wisconsin exposed everything we were worried about. hopefully Cam McGrone, he was against Wisconsin. That was his first game as the Mike linebacker. He got a lot of time as Ross was injured. So the issue with Cam McGrone has always been that he has the athleticism. He's a 5-star. I feel like no one was talking about him. Like he was a 5-star linebacker, and he just kind of like came into the program, and here he is. But redshirt freshman, takes some time to actually process and get up to speed. Now he's finally
the real deal.
Yeah,
the real
so
deal.
As soon as his mental game picks up, it's a tough position. You're a leader. You're the defensive captain really at that position. So if he's starting to catch up now, that is huge. But Wisconsin was his first game in extended action, and that's a really, really tough team to match up against. So hopefully that mitigates it. We got Jeter back and Dwumfor. Thankfully got some time. Really disliked how Jeter played against Wisconsin. He didn't really do well at all. But interested to see how Dwumfor does. And then obviously there's been praise for Smith and Hinton. Again, I don't know how much to believe that, whether it's like we need these guys to like be brought up to speed or they're actually getting there. It's hard to say whether this is like we're waving a red flag and hey, freshmen step up, or they're actually guys who are ready to really compete at a high level. So it's still scary. And like you said, we didn't learn much. But at least health wise, we're getting closer than we were at Wisconsin around the front seven. So yeah.
Stephen, I appreciate all of your at least semi-optimism. You're here for me, man. You're here for me in my moment of not trusting or believing in anything.
Here's the thing, man. I can't blame you anymore. And as much like optimism as I can say, I will not be surprised if something falls off. Because I was optimistic before this season, and how well did that? Like things happen that you can't really explain or you can't really foresee. Who saw this big of who saw Ambry Thomas starting the season? That's one thing where everyone was predicting him out. And then you can say any number of things where, it's the opposite, where things look like they're going to really explode for the passing offense. And then it slows down, and it's the weakness of the team. So it's such a volatile team, I feel like, this year, where you can see from week to week, you don't really know what to expect. So while I'm looking at the schedule, I could see Iowa and Michigan State as wins. I could very easily see you lose one of those and lose Penn State, Notre Dame, Ohio State. Those are all really good teams.
Well,
so
this is a good time to transition to our last little mini topic of
yeah
the night. Okay, Michigan got crushed by Wisconsin, and I think that was a very much an expectation adjustment. And here's how I feel,
Yes.
man. It's kind of, where are we, Stephen? At this point, it's kind of with Michigan football, what to expect, when you're not expecting. The old book, when you first get pregnant, or someone gets pregnant, they hand you the book. It's what to expect when you're expecting.
Yep.
But here it is with Michigan. We've lost to Ohio State 15 out of 16 years now. We've been, we've won 4 out of the last 8 against Michigan State. Maybe it might even be like 4 out of the last 10 in Michigan State. Big games, Michigan's come out empty, even with the talent over the past decade, and which has been about half the time. And here we go. It looks like Jim Harbaugh's team does not have either the talent, the cohesion, the leadership. I don't know what it is yet. And with a retrospective, after the year, we can identify what exactly it is that Michigan was missing or is missing. Caveats aside, maybe we turn this around and have a little, James Franklin, Penn State 2016, 2017-esque run. Everything's possible. Who knows? But this is where I'm at. What to expect when you're not expecting Michigan to be a playoff contender, which even though they've lost to Ohio State the past, 4 years, they've been in the playoff hunt until they play Ohio State, 2-3 out of the last 4 years. What are your expectations going into the next quarter of the season, we're officially, I guess, next third of the season, we're officially a third of the way through. How do you feel, Stephen, moving forward? How have your expectations changed from 4 weeks ago when we started the season?
Yeah, I had Michigan at like 2 losses on the season. I was expecting like a Notre Dame and then Ohio State, just because I can't pick Michigan against Ohio State every year and still be respected as like a somewhat partial person. And unfortunately, Ohio State still looks true. Notre Dame's still a top 10 team. So, but I didn't see Wisconsin blowing the doors off. Didn't expect the offense. And I think it was pretty naive. I don't know, like everyone was kind of buying in. I shouldn't say everyone. There were a couple people who were kind of telling people to hold off on the speed and space and stuff. But I think we were just all excited. So I didn't foresee the learning curve that we're at now. I'm now expecting, I think it's going to be 8-4, and then with an outside chance at 9-3. Ohio State looks like the best team in the country, and it's just ridiculous.
It's not fair, Steve.
It's ridiculous how little they miss. That's the thing. You have a guy who was Ryan Day was what, a passing game coordinator. That was it.
He's good at his job.
And then he's like, he was given the keys to a Lamborghini. So
I swear, if the Miami Dolphins do not hire Ryan Day in the next 2 years, Stephen Ross deserves to, give us a lot more money. I guess.
Yep.
I don't know.
But then they can get a transfer quarterback and right away just plug in and look like a Heisman candidate. So it's crazy. It's just crazy. And no one in the right mind would predict a win over that. If you took, because Michigan was favored, 6 points in that game. If you took that at the beginning of the season, you're probably, depending on how big of a fan you are and how much you like money, you're either happy or sad. But so I see that as a loss. I still see Michigan State as a win. It's going to be a closer game than I was initially expecting.
Michigan State is not good. That's one thing I think we've learned.
Their defense was getting carved up, but that Indiana quarterback, if he stays healthy, he was scary. He set the Big Ten, or was it Big Ten? He tied, I think, the Big Ten record for the most consecutive completions at 20. He had 20 straight completions.
You want to hear something funny, Stephen? My sister, huge Michigan football fan. She's been in 2 football games in her life. So this weekend was one of them for Michigan State because her boyfriend got free tickets through Meyer. He works for Meyer. Right,
sure.
So they got free tickets. So they're like, okay, we'll go, whatever. It's only an hour east of where they live. So they went to that game. Miserable experience, right? Michigan State almost lost to Indiana. No one's happy. The only other game she's ever been to, Michigan-Akron 2012.
Wow.
Where Michigan, or was it 2013, 2012? I think it was 2012, where, they had the Skywriter come in, and then he went to Michigan State, and everyone was feeling really good. Like, this is the year for Michigan. This is where it finally happens. Brady Hoke's coming off that Sugar Bowl BCS victory, and Devin Gardner throws 5 interceptions.
Almost lose to Akron.
It took a 4th and goal line stand on the 1-yard line.
And they missed, and they barely missed the catch to win.
For Michigan terrifying. To win the game. And so my sister has gone to 2 football games in her life, and had no fun, I don't think, at either one of them.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I felt so bad for her because no one's having fun. I told her she was allowed to cheer for State for one weekend. That's okay. You can do it. It's okay. Free tickets, man.
That's fair.
I can't pass them up. Go have fun.
But
no fun.
Yeah. So I see Ohio State, and then I think Michigan beats Iowa. SP Plus likes Michigan in that matchup. The line opened at 7. I think it's down to 4 points in favor of Michigan right now. But I still think Michigan will beat Iowa. I think knowing that the season and the Big Ten championship is on the line, you have no room for error now. I think that's still really present in all the players, all the coaches' minds. They're gonna lay out a lot out there against Iowa before heading to Champaign for Illinois. And I don't think they have to prepare a whole lot for Illinois. So I think you're going to see emptying a bit of what they have saved up for that Iowa game. It's a huge game. And then I see Michigan losing at least one of Notre Dame and Penn State back-to-back weeks.
Huh? That
Yeah,
sounds
so
awfully confident there.
well, here's the thing. If it's 8-4, which I'm predicting, it'd be both losses.
Yeah.
I think of those two, I think Notre Dame is more likely to be a victory. I think Penn State found this random guy as their quarterback this year after I don't know if he was a transfer, or I think they had a transfer and this guy was a backup who beat the transfer. I should do more Penn State research, but they're looking really solid. So I think if it's 9-3, it would be losses to Penn State and Ohio State. If it's 8-4, it would be a loss to those two programs as well as Notre Dame. So that's my expectation. I'm understanding of a 9-3 in that scenario. I could totally see
7-5.
I could. Well, here's the thing.
7-5 almost would be the most likely outcome I could see at this point.
I could. 8-4 seems like seems like it for me. 9-3 seems like an optimist. But I could totally see Michigan rolling into the Ohio State game at 7-4 and then beating Ohio State. How terrible would that be if the year that Michigan finally beats, Justin Fields and Ryan Day and everything in a meaninless game?
Wait! Shut.
Hold on.
Shut your
Think
pie
about
hole.
it.
No,
dude.
Stephen, go away. No, you're fired, man. Anytime Michigan beats Ohio State, it's a meaningful game.
I get that
game. I don't care if there's no Big Ten on the line. I don't care if there's no national playoff picture on the line. You play Ohio State, you beat Ohio State. The game means infinitely more than any other game on the schedule, no matter what. 100 times out of 100, more than the Big Ten championship game.
After 2016, where you win and you're in the Big Ten championship with playoff aspirations. After 2018, going into Ohio State, Big Ten championship, playoff aspirations. And then 2019,
tell me.
2019, you go in at 7-4.
I don't care. Go in at 1-10 and beat Ohio State. I don't care.
My God.
That saves a coach's job if you beat Ohio State at 1-10. I don't care. I am dead serious at this point. You know what's going to be very cathartic to me one day? I don't know when it's going to happen. I might be 74 by the time it happens. Michigan is going to blow out Ohio State. And I am not kidding you, Stephen. I will watch every second of that game every single day for the next 364 days. I am not even kidding you. The next time Michigan beats Ohio State, I will probably watch the accelerated highlight reel, like the 10-minute highlight reel of that game 364 times before the next time they play. I'm not kidding you. It's been so long.
It's ridiculous.
Sometimes I think Michigan fans, the fan base, has tried really hard over the past 2 decades to not get a I don't want to call it a little brother attitude, but like a we're the inferior program right now attitude. I don't exactly have the right words to say what I want to say in that regard, but I feel like for a long time Michigan fans have been fighting that. And I think the only way to remedy and get back to an even kill with Ohio State is to face those facts as a fan base, as a program, and say, we are the inferior program. We need to treat this game with the respect it deserves, and we really need to hate Ohio State. And I think the rivalry's been respected by every coach so far. I don't think there's any disrespect. And Brady Hoke did the best job, I think, of any of the coaches of the past decade of being like, we're aiming for this game. This game matters more than anything else. I don't care about anything else. And I think that's the only attitude to have.
Yep.
If you're at Michigan, because that's the only attitude Ohio State has. I have a really good friend who works on the staff at Ohio State, and every single day he Snapchats me the countdown clock to the Michigan game. I'm not even kidding you. The Michigan game clock or some variance of it is in every single room in the Ohio State facility.
Yep.
That's a level of obsession that is needed to win rivalry games, needed to win national titles, championships. That's the type of thing. Because Ohio State knows if they build themselves up and get better and better each week going into the Michigan game, and then they beat Michigan, everything's there for them. Everything's there for them.
It's a very emotional game, and I think, when Michigan's in a tough game, in an emotional driven game, I think that lines up with your with the stats that everyone points out where Michigan really struggles in those really close, really big games, and that's such like an intangible thing to like coach. It is like just a culture shift, and I don't know how you do that, but you're right. I mean, it's simply not good enough. And if Michigan hasn't scoured the face of the earth for the solution and how to change the approach for that at this point, like you said, that's something that costs you your job. If Harbaugh doesn't start doing that, it's not, people won't remember him for, lots of good, really solid, competitive teams. They're going to say, oh, he was the coach that couldn't beat Ohio State. Like,
you get Coopered, right?
Exactly.
You get Coopered.
That's what people remember you by. And if that doesn't bother him, then he's not at the right spot.
Harbaugh's on the Cooper line right now. Like he's
for sure.
And even worse than Cooper. I mean, Cooper had to rebuild Ohio State up. I mean, they were terrible when he took the job over, in a way that I don't even think Michigan was. They didn't make a bowl game, I don't think, until their third year under Cooper. And he got, he went like 2-11 against Michigan, I think. And some defenders of Harbaugh, when I made the comparison on Twitter, are like, hey, but Cooper got 13 years to do it. It's like, no, this is a different era. If you go 0-5 against Ohio State, next season is a must-win for Harbaugh. I mean, I love Jim Harbaugh. If he goes 0-7 against Ohio State, that's it.
Yeah, it's
rough
stuff.
That should be it. This is a whole other conversation for another day.
Yeah,
but
we gotta wait for this one.
I've turned my line of thinking has done a complete 180 over the past 365 days. From I used to believe Ohio State was a very, very, very important game, the biggest game on the schedule. But we could live without it every once in a while. But I am firmly in the camp that literally nothing else matters. 6-6, but you beat Ohio State, I'm happy with it. I don't care. Until Michigan starts asserting themselves in that game, they have. And I'm not trying to take anything away from double overtime, whatever. Best games ever. Michigan just needs to freaking win the game. That's it.
Yep.
End of story.
So what are your expectations for the rest of the season?
7-5, truthfully, and I don't. That doesn't cost Jim Harbaugh his job. Harbaugh gets one more crack at the whip, no matter what, next year, even with a 7-5 season. Because honestly, every program has a down year, and maybe no one saw this year coming, but things just might have lined up imperfectly, and it sucks because we had the home schedule that we had the home schedule we have. But watching this team play Rutgers, I said this before, looked like the JV team beating up on the freshman team. And I did not mean that as a compliment to Michigan. Something about it, and I think what it is the Shea Patterson stuff plus the defensive line stuff bothers me more than anything else because both are so blindingly obvious. I love Shea. He has all the tools to be an all-conference great quarterback. His reads are so late. You're so right. He only makes throws when people are blindingly open, and the great quarterbacks don't do that. He can be a good quarterback, but I think that puts a ceiling on his ability and the offense's ability. And then the defensive line, if you don't get interior defensive line play, you're not beating Penn State. You're not sniffing Penn State. You're not beating Notre Dame, and you're definitely not beating Ohio State.
Yep.
Rutgers is a coin flip at the best if your interior defensive line isn't able to do anything. I mean, it sucks losing.
A coin flip? Rutgers is not a coin
flip.
No,
did I say Rutgers? I meant Iowa.
Okay, yeah. Maybe
Iowa
I misheard you, but
Iowa is a coin flip. Let me tell you what, 2003, 2004, I saw Iowa, and it was a Michigan homecoming game, just like this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa came in here, they beat the bricks off of Michigan. I think it might have been, and I'll stop my ranting after this. It was my very first Michigan football game. I'm pretty sure it was 2003. We're going to look up the score right quick. No, it wasn't 2003. It might have been 2000. Yeah, this is great. This is great entertainment.
I was a young lad at this time.
It was 2002. Iowa beat the bricks off of Michigan. 34-9.
Oof. Yeah, that's a beating.
Yeah, and it was homecoming for Michigan, and it was my first ever football game. Iowa was ranked 14th, and Michigan was ranked 8th.
Wow.
Homecoming is my first year living in the state of Michigan. Oh, I get to see the Michigan Wolverines. This is huge. 34-9. It set my expectations. It should have set my expectations for the rest of my life there. Big games in Michigan Wolverines. Do not mix.
Yep. Well, this will be a big opportunity, man. Season's on the line. Like, really, if you want everything in front of you still, there is no room for error. Yep. This is it.
What to expect when you're not expecting, man. I'm not expecting a whole lot. I'm not. That's just where I am. And maybe it's just mental safety.
Mental fatigue, mental safety. I get it. I am a eternal optimist, I'll say, but I even think I'm even dialing back quite a bit. I'm with you.
I'm a very passionate, emotional, loud optimist. So when you've turned me, you've broken me, essentially. I am broken.
You can't put that on me, man.
Not you. No, Michigan football broke me, I'm saying.
Okay.
They broke me.
Yep.
You're still there, so I'm impressed by you. You've got a stronger fortitude. It's that Michigan man lineage there. All right, Stephen, have fun in Europe. I'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'll be back. I'll be watching. Hopefully I get some tweets out there with some thoughts. Hopefully they're positive more than negative, but yeah, we'll see. If not, I'll drown myself in some Europe beer.
I'll find some $1.50 imported beer from Romania.
That's it.
All right, I expect you back 10 pounds heavier, like Ben Mason's off season there.
There we go. All weight gain is good weight gain.
That's right. Especially at a wedding in Europe.
That's it.
All right, Stephen, go blue.
All right, go blue.